Hi, everybody. Can you hear me all right? All right. So I'm not sure if this is going to... I'll trust that you guys will pull up my slideshow if you don't mind. And in the meantime, I kind of like this graphic for where I'm going as well. So I want to sort of weave in a couple of things that have been presenced up until now. So item number one, IPCC recently told us that we have 12 years to get our shit together. Anybody have any disagreements with that? So we have 12 years to fundamentally transform the global economy from one that is degenerative and extractive to one that is regenerative. Item number two is that there are currently 3 billion people on the planet engaged with agriculture. And 80% of global food is produced by smallholder farmers. And over 50% of atmospheric carbon on a per annum basis, and over 60% cumulatively over the course of the Industrial Revolution has been caused by agriculture and food more broadly. So part of our hypothesis is that a core intervention point in the transformation of our global economy has to do with how we deal with the, how shall I say, either the public good or the public degradation produced by how we extract resources from the greater than human world through agriculture, forestry, fisheries, etc. So what Regen Network is doing is creating a platform that allows us to make agreements about ecological health in any ecosystem around the world, and our aim is to make that as easy as renting a room through Airbnb or getting a car from Uber, right? And so just a little bit about the potential of ecosystems and agroecosystems more broadly and why we're so focused on creating technological solutions for ecosystems. Ecosystems together have the potential to sequester 500 gigatons of carbon dioxide. That's actually 500 gigatons of carbon. So that's more like, what is it? 3,300 trillion tons of CO2 can be sequestered into ecological systems. And I'll note that there's no other way to sequester atmospheric carbon that has the byproducts of healthy soil, clean water, biodiversity, healthy bees, and healthy people. So if we can't figure that out, well, I guess sort of like on one side you have this potential for a healthy, thriving world with a strong agricultural and ecosystemic base. You have resilience, you have regeneration, you have healthy people, and you have a healthy planet. And on the other side, I think maybe we all shudder to think of what that world looks like. So each different agroecosystem has its own context-specific need. And up until now, the way that this sort of general problem set has been thought about is sort of standardization. Sort of the way that maybe Hilton or the Hyatt deals with hospitality. And so there's one type of room, and you check in, and there's one type of room. There's one type of carbon credit right now that you can get, carbon offsets, right? Voluntary or compliance. There's one standard that everyone uses, right? And that standard is, oddly enough, being used whether it's avoided deforestation or carbon credits due to emissions reduction. That is all considered a carbon offset. None of that has anything to do with atmospheric carbon removal. none of it has to do with governance of the commons in a meaningful way in which the stakeholders who are responsible for both taking regenerative action and who benefit from that regenerative action are involved in a process of making agreements. So this is all some sort of general context setting. In our talk, we're going to endeavor to invite you to consider what it looks like to engage with creating agreements between the different stakeholders who are responsible for stewarding landscapes, right, and who benefit from that stewardship, what those agreements look like, how you can generate the data needed to verify whether an agreement has been met or not, and what that looks like. And we're going to walk through a few case studies, and we're also going to try during our brief presentation to engage all of you in thinking about your concrete context and a little bit about what agreements might look like that are creating commons benefiting, public good generating agreements between land stewards and the people who are benefiting from their good stewardship decisions. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Daniel, who is a software engineer from Silicon Valley, who is on our team, and he's going to be talking a little bit with you to engage you in thinking about this in a concrete way. Thank you. All right, so who here, when you were holding an image of the place that you're working in, that you're living in, that you're inhabiting, who here was seeing agricultural fields? Just raise your hand. I just kind of want to get a sense, like who is seeing fields? Who is seeing a city? Who is seeing a city? Who knows that that city is part of the fields? Who is seeing a forest? Ocean? Just to kind of get a sense of things. Great. So, is that clicker around yet? Okay. So, our hypothesis, so a little bit about my background. My background is doing agroecological work with smallholder farmers around the world. And so I did that for many years, and I started to realize that the systemic challenges to working on a one-by-one or even training trainers in order to create change were insurmountable when you think about the pace of change and what we need to do in order to transform the way that we're interacting with the natural world as a society. And so I started a deep inquiry into what sort of transformative technology might look like. So I'm not a techno-utopian, singularian, Silicon Valley technocrat. I have spent my life working with campesinos around the world. I'm going to go over it just a little bit. And so this solution is rooted, as Michel was talking about, our solution is rooted in an understanding of how to bring scalable and transformative technology to what I would argue is the most important application of data in the world, which is our understanding of living systems and our ability to make dynamic agreements about the health of those living systems in order to govern them and create dynamic incentives around them. So this is a very simple, right? This is a very 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 kind of a little graphic here. Bundled into this is an enormous amount of complexity. Who, we use the word stakeholders, use whatever you want. Who are the human and non-human entities that need to be involved in an agreement in order to steward a place on Earth? Whether it's air quality, water quality, soil health. What is it? The air quality, water quality, soil health, and how are we understanding that something has taken place? Is the soil healthy or is it not healthy? So that's where big data and remote sensing and IoT and machine learning all enters into the equation. Is this how? And then the agreement. How do you create an agreement? How do you enforce that agreement, right? In our case, we're creating a digital, there was that slide that was shared with us around the fact that eBay has more dispute resolutions per day than the UK does. Okay, so if we're thinking about being able to scale a system in which people can make peer agreements about the health of their ecosystems, we need to have some sort of contracting framework, some sort of dispute resolution framework, some sort of agile, peer-led governance system around ecological health. So that's where ecological agreements come in, where we have the ability to measure the state of an ecosystem and the change of state, the future potential that you would like to achieve, make an agreement about that that includes how you measure it. So I want to like ground this a whole nother layer. I'm going to try really rapidly to work through a few different case studies. This one, so we're going to talk about Walker's Reserve, some work happening in the Amazon with the Rainforest Foundation, and corporate work happening with a leading brand that would like to be able to bring this kind of ecological agreement to their farmers and their consumers. So Walker's sand mine is a sand mine in Barbados that built the entire island. So every single building on that island nation was built with sand that came from this quarry. It's transforming from an extractive industry to a regenerative industry, becoming a bioregional food hub and an example of island food resilience for the entire Caribbean. In order to do that, they're thinking about all of the different ways that they can create incentive and monetize the regenerative stewardship of this piece of property. And so they're actually starting to partner. One of the biggest industry in Barbados is tourism, right? So how do you partner in order to create sort of a positive, good relationship between people who normally are just going for sand and sun and some booze on the beach, so that their relationship with that ecosystem of that island actually creates net benefit, and they get to participate in that and start to become agents of change. So that's sort of the core set of questions that we're asking. So in the mega-food example, what we're working with is being able to create transparent agreements between this company and their farmers around soil health, so that customers can understand the carbon impact, primarily is what they're focused on, of their choice of, in this case, supplements, right? So instead of having a new certification or just, you know, it's organic or it's less bad, what does it look like for a customer to actually be able to, embedded with their relationship with this brand, understand the positive headway that they're making on their carbon footprint by interacting with this product? And in the case of the Rainforest Foundation, what we're doing is creating the ability for the Rainforest Foundation to steward direct relationships between donors and indigenous communities who are stewarding Amazonian rainforest, so that there's a direct peer relationship between people who would like to incentivize stewardship, create a monetary value for the lungs of the planet, the lungs and heart, the respiratory system of our hydrological system of this entire planet are basically come from the ability of the Amazon rainforest to transpire and put all that oxygenated water up into the atmosphere and start pumping it around the world, right? There's a value to all of us of creating relationships in which that forest is maintained. So what we're doing is making it possible, as I was saying earlier, so it's as simple as renting a room for people who would like to participate in stewarding the Amazon, to simply say, hey, I'll pay $10 a year to this Amazonian tribe to steward this, and they can weave that in to preserving their culture, their lifestyle in those forests. So the last example that I'll talk about, which in order to achieve these three very different case studies, right, we're building a fundamental piece of digital infrastructure in which you can create flexible agreements about ecological health and create sort of flexible digital agreements about ecological health between two or more parties. The backbone of that, the data backbone that's necessary to achieve that, can also be used by other people. And this is an example of a group called Earth Pulse, which is actually creating the opportunity to monitor So everything I've talked about is like the carrot side. How do you create an agreement in which we're honoring stewardship and the provision of public goods through multiple parties working together to regenerate soil or to regenerate forests or to steward them? Earth Pulse is also thinking about what does it look like to have an early warning system for deforestation so that you can deploy someone from a governmental agency to go intervene with the illegal logging or the illegal fishing. And so this is an example of us being able to leverage the same essentially public infrastructure that we're creating with its own governance to be able to work on both sides. So I was asked to speak a little bit about the role of blockchain technology. It's a whole, we could spend an entire day unpacking the pros and cons of blockchain. Fundamentally, blockchain technology, what we believe blockchain technology allows us to do is create a distributed and decentralized organization in which the protocols that rule how participants share their data enables them to have sovereignty over that data. So instead of having we could easily build something that is essentially sort of a clone of Google or Facebook focused on ecosystem data, right? Where we're monetizing the data in ways that are disconnected from the exchange value and transaction value that it creates between the peers. We don't feel like that's actually probably a very good move for the resilience and health of the system as a whole. What blockchain enables us to do is to create sort of the cryptographic peer network system that enables people to have control over their data and to use it for the agreements that they would like and the analytics that they would like fundamentally, and to participate in governing that and to create sort of alternative and dynamic monetization strategies that people can actually attune to their own context. So that was a lot of buzzwords. I apologize. My attempt to sort of contextualize how we're thinking about blockchain. There's a lot of different interpretations of how this can be used. So I just want to close, I just want to take a moment. This is a graphic from headwaters all the way out to the ocean to understand that all of this is part of one whole living system. There is not like a forestry and an agriculture and an ocean like fragment. We have to start thinking of the whole, and we have to start thinking of the specific agreements between the people at these different places which enable their aspect of the landscape to be generating the public good that's necessary for the whole to work in an integral and healthy way. So thank you all very much. Sorry for going a little bit over. How much was I over? Like 2 minutes? 5 minutes. Thank you all.